Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So here we are dealing with properties of trapezoids. We're going to be using those properties to find missing measurements. So we are going to be dealing with two different types of trapezoids, one being a non-isosceles, the other one being isosceles. So I want you to notice this non-isosceles trapezoid seems to have something special going on here, and that would be a right angle. And if that's a right angle, this is a right angle. So we're going to have to make sure that we really get to know that right there. We're going to get into this. Here we go. Alright, so one pair of opposite sides are parallel. I want you to notice that AB has this little arrow and DC has this little arrow. Again, these little arrows mean that they're parallel. Notice on the isosceles trapezoid, we also have AB is parallel to DC. So in that case, it doesn't matter if it's isosceles or not. You're going to have one set of parallel sides. There are three properties that belong only to the isosceles trapezoid. One is that the legs are congruent. So notice this leg here has a tick mark and this leg over here has a tick mark. That's because AD is congruent to BC. We're going to make a note of that. AD is congruent to BC. We're also going to make note that the diagonals are congruent. This is for the isosceles. Notice that if I was to draw my diagonals here and here, they would not be the same because from A to C is a lot farther. So that means AC is longer. So in this case over here, the isosceles, however, we do have AC is congruent to BD. These distances would be the same since the angles are the same. Next up is our base angles. Notice we have two different bases. We have base 1 and base 2. Base 1 and base 2. And we label the parallel sides the bases because the other two are the legs. So base 1 and base 2 are interchangeable. It doesn't matter where they are. Just know that they are the parallel sides. So we do have base 1, we have base 2. For the isosceles, again, this is for the isosceles trapezoid. We do have congruent angles, congruent base angles. So that means angle D is congruent to angle C. And then we have the other base where angle A is congruent to angle B. Make that congruent sign a little better. Angle B. So we do have that situation there. The next one is that the opposite angles are supplementary. So opposite angles in this case will look like these two. If you notice, 90 plus 90 is 180. So we do have these two angles being supplementary. It would be the same over here, these two angles. If we put them together on one line, they will be supplementary. So we do have to say that angle A plus angle D is equal to 180. Hey guys, do you remember parallel lines cut by a transversal? Yeah. If I was to label ABBA on these guys, you would end up with this relationship anyways. So again, same thing with B and C. Angle B and angle C is equal to 180 degrees. Don't forget that these here are interchangeable. So if I can add B and C, I can add B and D because C and D are the same thing. And if you have trouble seeing it, don't worry. It'll come up later and then you'll see it. So let's take a look at some of these. We already did this. The median. This word. This right here. We've seen it before. We've seen it in triangles. You remember, a median connects two midpoints on the legs. And the way that would work, and it would look, is something like this. You'd have the middle here, and you'd have the middle here. You connect them, and that is the median. And I'm going to highlight that because it needs highlighting, because we need to make sure it stands out to our faces and our eyes. Our brains need to make sure it registers. So our median is parallel to the bases. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is parallel to this. Remember our arrows? And then this median is also parallel. Notice I drew another little arrow right there. So we have 3 lines that are parallel now. We have our bases. So we have our base 1 and our base 2, and then our median that are all parallel. We also have our formula for this median to know how long it is, or the distance. So this is actually the base 1 plus the base 2 added together, and we're taking half. That's our formula for that. Let's get into the thick of things. Let's see if we can find this angle measure with these properties. Well, we're talking about angles. So it's going to be either this one, and that's it, because we're talking about angles. So we're going to use these 2 ideas. Well, is this an isosceles? No, it is not. So right here, we're going to go ahead and make a note. Not isosceles. So we cannot say that, oh my God, I really butchered that spelling. Isosceles. Isosceles. Jeez Louise, that was horrible. Alright, anyhow, so we have our not isosceles, trapezoid. So now we can actually go through and figure out what that measure of the angle is, because we have one thing that is true. Opposite angles are supplementary. So we're going to go ahead and add S and T. So I know angle S and angle T are supposed to be supplementary, which means that they equal 180. Well, I know angle S is who knows what, and angle T is our 75 degrees. Set up your equation. We don't know it, so we're going to call it X. Hey, Miss Carpio, you're making all these mistakes. Minus the 75, gone. X is equal to 105 degrees, which is also our angle S. And we're done. Take a look at that guy. This is isosceles. So we can already label that right there. Is isosceles. Yay, I got the spelling right on that one. Okay, so we know that this is isosceles, so that means we do have congruent base angles. So congruent base angles. I want you all to get used to listing what you do know, because that's going to help out a lot. So the reason why it helps is because if this is 51, then that means this is 51. Because this is isosceles. If I know that, now I know I can go ahead and add angle P plus angle Q to equal 180 degrees. That's why you want to write it down, because when you write it, you're going to be able to remember things a little bit better. Now that I know this, I can go ahead and substitute stuff in. So angle P is 51 degrees plus angle Q is 28x minus 11 equals 180. Don't forget, we're going to combine some like terms. Our like terms, well, I don't have anything for x, and I should really make that look like a better x. But I do have a 51 here and a minus 11 right there. So I can combine those two. So 51 minus 11 is 40. Now that I have that, I can go ahead and say, well, that's 40 plus 28x. is equal to 180. I made things look nicer. Now I can continue. I'm going to go ahead and subtract the 40. Subtract the 40. And you go ahead and solve and we'll come right back to this. Boom, you should have gotten x is equal to 5. Double check your work with mine. If you see a mistake, please feel free to shoot me a message. Again, I'm only human. I am known to make mistakes like this horrible spelling. We're going to move on from our angles. On to segments. Dun dun dun. Notice this right here is the median. Notice this right here is the median. We're going to go ahead and label them that. This is the median. And this is the median. The same property will apply to either or. So, we know that the median is equal to base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2. Same thing over here. Median is base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2. Okie dokie. We know that this here is our base 1. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't, Miss Carview. It does not matter. So base 2. I know I had called it base 1, but again, it doesn't matter. Base 2 and base 1. And then we already have our median. Our median is unknown, so we're going to call that x. We know our base 1 is 12.9. But Miss Carpio, it has a decimal. I really don't care. It doesn't matter if it has a decimal or not. It's the same rule. Remember, let the math take you there. So then our base 2 is 5.5. And that's going to be divided by 2. So go ahead, figure it out. We'll be right back. And here we are. You should have gotten 9.2. Notice that I'm making sure I write this out. The median, which is WV, is 9.2 units long. Next up, this bad boy right here. Oh my God, look, there's decimals. Don't worry about it. Set it up. Let's see what it looks like. Hopefully you remember to label everything. Make sure you substitute appropriately. And then this is like the confusing part. But we have a fraction. How do we get rid of the denominator? We're going to multiply everything by 2. We'll multiply one side by 2. And what we do to one side, we got to do to the other. It doesn't matter which side we start with. So we're going to go ahead and multiply by 2 so that these 2's go away. They get multiplied or divided out. So then we have 5.5 times 2. And we end up with 11. And we have 4.4 plus the x. And we're going to solve. Go ahead. And you should have gotten 6.6. If you need help with figuring how to do this multiplication, why we multiplied by 2, remember 2 is the denominator. If it was 3, we would be multiplying by 3. If it was a third. Again, if this was a 4, then we would multiply by 4. It all depends what the denominator is. There you go. We've done angles. We've done medians. Happy trails.